What's going down, people? What's going down? Mr. Elk Spaghetti with the next video in the series. So, like we've been doing Plan B with Mr. Elk Spaghetti, this edition is going to be preservation of food, meats, fruits, vegetables, the types, the uses, and then I'm going to throw in some rendering fats. Y'all are going to have to follow up with the links in the description with videos from different providers here on YouTube, and it's a really good source of information. Like I said, I'm not going to spoon feed you and recreate the wheel, because there's a lot of good information out there and a lot of people have already created such. So I want those people to get the credit that they're deserved for the work that they've done. It's information that I've had to premise some of this, and it'll go along with one of my other videos in the future. My experience to be able to talk about stuff like this, even though I do research to be able to get you guys the correct videos here to be able to reference. I've been out, I grew up in the Midwest, central Iowa. I've been out in the fields hunting, migratory game bird, large game, small game. Been in the farm atmosphere with domestic livestock, whether it be pigs, cows, horses, so on and so forth. So being able to grow stuff on the farm that I grew up on, we grew corn, soy, and then some other smaller stuff. But the money crops were corn and soy, and that was my great grandfather's thing moving forward. And we had 30,000 acres before we closed that operation down and everybody moved out to SoCal, which in my opinion, I wish we would have stayed in the Midwest, but neither here nor there. So let's jump right on into it. Flip my note page here real quick so we can premise this. We're going to get into preservation types, and I've gotten a lot of emails from you guys. Actually, before I get into that, along with being out in the field and hunting, you know, the majority of my life since I was like 5-6 years old enough to understand why we do what we do and how to do it ethically, and having Native American blood on my father's side. Culturally, hunting and gathering is in my blood, and I continue that on in my adult life. I volunteered with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife as a hunter's education instructor. So I studied the science behind, you know, holding capacity, the edge effect on, you know, what games you can harvest, when you can harvest them, and why. Being able to manage different herds or species of wildlife as we harvest for our needs, to be able to prolong the life of that species in general and have it flourish while we're able to pull what we need and harvest that for our tables and our families. I really enjoyed teaching it. So when we got into the series and Lou tapped me to do this series for you guys, I was honored, because I enjoy teaching both in law enforcement and on the outdoor side, whether it's processing big game, hunting, setting up firearms, archery equipment, so on and so forth. Somebody asked for some trapping tutorials and stuff like that. I'm going to come up with that. I'm not a huge trapper. I've got basic knowledge of it, but this is an opportunity for me to learn as well. So I'm going to study a bunch of different avenues that I have on that with people that I know. I'm going to tap some of y'all that have emailed me on it, and we're going to put together something for a trapping section in one of the later videos. But without further ado, we'll get into preservation for meats, fruits, vegetables, and stuff like that. Preservation types are going to be canning, dehydration, pickling, fermenting, and then salting / salt curing, smoking, curing. This is all stuff that is going to require a skill set to know how to do it, a little bit of equipment, but it's going to allow you to harvest or grow more than you're going to need right now, and then maintain it for either a short time period, which is anywhere from 3 weeks to 6 months, or long time period, which is a year or more. This is important when you get into an economic downturn, especially with supply chain shortages, food shortages, so on and so forth, because stuff will be increasingly scarce on our store shelves. So I'm not saying you have to have this huge garden to go out and do this. This means you can go to bulk stores like Smart and Final, Costco, some of the other wholesale outlets that deal with the public for retail to get the larger quantities of food, whether it be diced tomatoes, corn, applesauce, some of the other stuff, and then taking that back to the house in the large quantities and being able to can it into user sizes for you and your family and be able to store it long term. So we'll start off with canning. And like I said, I've attached links to different videos in the description. Canning will allow you to preserve meats, fruits, vegetables, and this is a long-term storing technique. The equipment you're going to need is, and the consensus amongst all y'all, and then a lot of the stuff that I've been reading and looking at is 23-quart pressure canner for the pressure side of it, because there's different types of canning. You've got pressure canning, water bath canning, and then steam canning. All of them are viable options. You need to know the nuts and bolts on all three, because you may not be able to use a pressure canner because you don't have the availability of electricity. But a water bath canner or a steam canner, you can definitely do that using, say, fucking propane or a wood fire stove. But the 23-quart pressure canner, in the time we're in now, you can still get that stuff. Electricity still readily available. Even if we do have the availability of electricity go down, there's options with solar paneling to charge batteries, so this would be an option for you to use some of that power assets that you have at the time to be able to safely preserve and so you can store your food. The jars, the lids, the rings, jar grabber, funnel, that's all going to be required for all the different canning styles. It's very important that you learn to do this the right way, and that's why I very carefully went through and hand selected the videos that I've attached. Because if you don't do it correctly and you skip steps in this process, you will have food spoilage. You're going to lose some of that food that you're trying to preserve, and that can be detrimental to you and your family. Dehydrating. Everyone's probably had dehydrated fruits and meats at some point in their life. Not hard to do, and it's going to last. So you guys know about dehydration, you know what it can do, you know how long that stuff stores. You can have a pack of beef jerky in your backpack forever and a day. You're good to go, even if it's been open. Cool. Sustains fucking energy level when you're out and about. It's also a good viable way to store meats if you don't have anything else available to you, and then fruits as well, because you do need to get some of those simple carbs into your body, and those are retained through the dehydration process of fruits. When I talk about packaging up for storage and refrigeration is possible, me personally, I'm not endorsed by Food Saver, not sponsored in any way, shape, or form, but I do use a commercial grade Food Saver. They sell large rolls of the bags. Do not buy the pre-cut boxes of bags. Do not. Trust me, do not. Buy the rolls, the big large boxes of the rolls, and then you cut your own bags each time. So if you're sealing up ground beef, chicken, wild game, whatever it may be, you're labeling it properly, sealing it up, you're removing all the air out of there, because everybody that's been out hunting, fishing, so on and so forth knows that your primary causes of spoilage are going to be heat, dirt, and moisture. So if you can remove all that, you seal them up in a package and you can get them to a cool, dry space. Even with meats, if you can get them below 50 degrees in a cool, dark place, they're going to last for longer than they would just being out and about in direct sunlight, room temperature, so on and so forth. We talked about root cellars in the last video. I'll go into storage in a later video on you know, the environment that you're going to want, humidity wise, light wise, temperature wise, and you want to keep that somewhat controlled, where not everyone's going in and out of there. You don't want it in a high traffic area of your house or your property, where when you're going in and out of there, you're getting what you need. You're not spending extended amounts of time. People understand how that works and how to maintain that environment for what you guys have. We move on to pickling. Everybody's had pickled eggs, pickled pig's feet, pickles, so on and so forth. Pickling is an excellent way to store stuff long term. Long term. So the video's attached here in the profile, meats, veggies, so on and so forth. And this is where I start to lose people. Oh, I don't like stuff that's pickled. Oh, I don't like this. I don't like that. Well, I'm going to push this out the exact way that I used to push it out to different clients I had when I was doing fitness and nutrition plans. For the nutrition plans, what I used to tell people is you have to develop the mindset that you are not eating because of what you like, you're eating for a purpose. In this environment, we are eating for survivability. So it's not always going to be what you like, but you have to come back to the realization that America and Americans have turned into a society and a people of like culinary expectations. We're all culinary experts. Look at all the cooking channels and shit on TikTok and all over fucking social media. As the availability of foods decrease, your expectations of what you like and what you need to survive are going to change greatly, and you need to be able to roll with those punches, because if you don't, life's going to get real fucking difficult. So everything in pickling deals with water, vinegar, and salt in a brine. It's a man-made brine, and it's used to pickle stuff over time. And when you get into pickling, and you're going to hear this in some of the videos, it's you got to give whatever you're pickling enough time to fully absorb that brine all the way through and be completely pickled. Because if you get to it before then, you're going to have product that's not pickled all the way through. And to be able to get the long-term storage status on that, it's going to need to be completely pickled through and through. So then we go on to the next one. It's going to be fermenting. Well, you guys know a lot more about fermenting than you think you do. Beer, fermented. Wine, fermented. Hard liquors, fermented. So the four main types of fermenting that we know as a society are going to be alcohol fermenting, vinegar fermenting, and then we have the nasty portion of fermenting that you have to be aware of, because it could save your life, and it's rotting. It's foods rotting. That's a part of the fermentation process that you don't want to experience. If you experience that, that's where people get sick. You can lose your food storage that you have. So you have to be really aware of what good mold looks like, bad mold looks like, because not all mold is bad. Some mold you can scrape off and you're fucking good to go. And some of these videos will address that and teach you guys exactly what you're looking for, because we know that there's certain antibiotics that are developed from different types of molds. So not all molds are bad. I encourage you to learn the difference between them, what they look like, what they can do for you, because when it gets down to it and you need certain stuff for survivability in the future, and you don't have that knowledge, you can put yourself in a really tight situation where you either suffer the consequences or somebody you love does. And then the last one is going to be lacto fermenting. It has nothing to do with milk or nothing like that. It has to do with the bacteria that's used, and this is for what's primarily used in the fermenting process for vegetables. It's not fruits. There's too much sugar in it. Anytime you introduce sugars into the fermenting process, over a certain amount of time, you're going to end up with those sugars converting into alcohols. Hence, jailhouse hooch, shit like that. For those of y'all that don't know, you don't know. It's cool. You ain't got to know. So check out that video. It's an awesome process, and the people that are in that video, it's a couple, man and wife. They've been homesteading a while, and they have a large following for their channel. So cruise over, check out the video, show them some love, give them a like, give them a follow, because they have a lot of information in their channel, not only on the fermenting process as well. But that process for fermenting is going to use distilled water, salt, in ratio, and then the cold storage of fermented products. This is going to be more shorter term, not like you leave it on the counter and the next day it's fucking bad, but short term, 3 weeks to 6 weeks, 8 weeks, at 55 degrees or lower. And that's cold storage where you're going to want it dark and 55 degrees or lower. Now with fermented foods, if you can get them into refrigeration, or if you live in an environment that happens to be down below in the 30s, below 40 in the 30s, fermented foods will last indefinitely, but it's an acquired taste, and we get back into, oh, I don't like the way it tastes. If you ever had sauerkraut, sauerkraut's fermented, amongst a lot of other foods that you probably had that you don't even know. So remember that you're eating for a purpose, and it's not to get fat, dumb, and happy. It's to make sure that you and yours can survive. Fermenting also provides what we know in the health and fitness community as a probiotic. Some of y'all take probiotics when, if you just had some fermented foods in your diet, not a lot of them, you wouldn't have to put that artificial shit in your bodies. But y'all learned something new today too. So then we get into salting meats, and then meat curing with smoking and stuff like that. This is a process that's using pickling salt to cover meats, and then the smoking portion of it is you're taking cuts of meat before butcher and you're smoking them at a very low temperature over anywhere between 12 to 16, 18 hours. And that's curing the meats where they do not need to be refrigerated. They have an amazing fucking flavor to them. Salted meats, a lot of times when you're using those, you got to wash them off because for table fare, of course, and then you can cook with those as well. What I will say, we get back to the canning portion. When you are there's ways to be able to can raw meats. I prefer to cook my meats because that's how I like it. But what I'll do is I'll set it up, because everyone has their go-to spices for fish, for chicken, for beef, for pork, whatever it may be. You have your go-to spices, and it's not one particular genre of food like Italian seasoning or teriyaki. For teriyaki chicken, do not use teriyaki sauce in canning. It has sugar in it. It will not fucking end well. You will grow mold. But that way, going forward, if you're doing chicken or beef or whatever, you're using a Montreal seasoning or seasoning salt, or say lemon pepper for chicken, or lemon pepper for fish. It's a base seasoning because that is already cooked. So when it comes out, all you're doing is heating it up and eating it. And in all reality, it's already cooked. You don't have to heat it up to eat it. Not many people can eat cold stuff, but for those of y'all that have been in the military, whether you were an Army grunt, you were an 03 in the Corps, or whatever it may be, you guys have had meals out of packages. And for those of y'all that think, oh, I'll just pick up a bunch of MREs. Yeah. For those of us that have indulged in MREs, you're eating for a purpose. There's very few of those that are actually good. We've developed a taste for some of those. And those of y'all out there that have lived off of them, been over in the fucking sandbox or in country, you guys understand. We trading shit for certain MREs or parts of certain MREs. You guys can throw that shit down in the comments. We'll have a good time with it to see what everybody's favorite MRE is. But MRE is a highly processed food, and you're gonna have to drink copious amounts of water, otherwise you're gonna have gastrointestinal issues with that. Where the food that you're gonna harvest, you're gonna buy, harvest, grow on your own, is going to be better off for you and your family, because it's not going to be highly processed. It's not going to require your body to do that much more work. When the body works more, it uses more calories. Therefore, you're going to have to eat more food to be able to carry the workload that you're going to do for whatever you're doing at that time, whatever your job field is. So always take that into consideration. Food is like number 2 on the list. Clean water is probably number 1. Shelter, clean water, food. And probably in that order, because if you get caught in the elements, it doesn't matter if you have food or clean water or not, you're fucked. But I'll go into water purification, how it's done in the field, how you can do it in the house, different equipment you can use at your houses, because you can't always rely on somebody else doing their job. If y'all haven't already, buy a water tester and test out the tap water that's coming out at your house, and you'll see exactly what your family's putting into their bodies. My family, we don't drink tap water. All of our water is brought in. Tap water, that's showers and shit like that. It's not quite like south of the border water where you get dysentery and some other nasty shit and end up getting fucked up from it. But there's lots of chlorine and all kinds of nastiness that they use to purify the water in mass as opposed to you taking it at a smaller level and being able to purify it in your households, or knowing how to purify it out in the field if you happen to get stuck out somewhere, vehicles fucking damaged, disabled, or otherwise, and you short on water. You can come up with water. You can create water from waste. You know where to dig. You can create some water, but you're gonna have to know how to filter it as well. So we'll get into that in a future video. So that is what I have for these are basic preservation types. There's gonna be some other stuff out there to preserve foods. Another caveat that I will add in on this video is going to be rendering fats. I've included a link in on this. What you need to know is that every time you harvest an animal, you should be rendering fats. You should be using everything that you're getting from the animal. Fats are fucking important. They're used for fucking preserving fucking clothing, waterproofing. You can use them in candles. You can use them in fucking fire starters with, you know, different lint, old. We'll get into it. But cooking. Everybody said, oh, what are you going to do when you don't have no oil? What are you going to do when you don't have no butter? You ain't got a fucking dairy cow, do you? So having that lard, being able to render fats down from different animals, whether it be beef, pork, venison, bear. A lot of motherfuckers render fats down from bears they harvest. They harvest one bear a year. They render the fats down. They got fats to cook with, preserve, waterproof, everything for year round. And when we're talking about waterproofing, that could be canvas for tents. So there's a whole host of stuff that you can do with rendered fats. You get a lot of it. The video that's in here is real good about it. Follow the process, because if you end up with any impurities when you're rendering those fats, when you go to store it, you're going to end up with it fucking spoiling and going rancid, and then it's not usable. So I hope y'all got a lot out of this video. And like the other ones that I've thrown out, do me a favor, tell your friends about this. Let's get them all the information as early as we can, just in case the channel disappears. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. Hit the little bell icon at the top. Turn your notifications on for me so that when I release a video, you get it firsthand. Just in case somebody says, hey, we don't like this elk spaghetti dude, we're going to go ahead and fucking knock him off. We're going to delete that channel. And I will catch y'all on the flip side. Mr. Elk Spaghetti, signing off.